What's up, Psytrance producers, and welcome to a new tutorial. As you maybe have recognized, I've started to delete old videos that aren't up to date anymore, that are like out of my knowledge standard from today, and that were also under my old artist name. And today we're again covering the topic build-up and risers. So first I'm going to explain you why we need risers, what they are for, and then I'm going to show you how I create my own risers and build-ups. So first of all, I'm going to show you why we need risers and build-ups. I prepared a little example, as you can see here, and I suggest that we just listen to this excerpt, and you will probably hear out right away what's wrong with this. You probably got that right. There is no transition between the first segment of the track, as I call it, which is this area here, and the second segment of the track, which is this area here. In the first area, or the first segment, you only have kick and bass playing. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, the synth and the main progressions start to play. So you have a rapid change in track energy without anything being introduced or announced. And this is where our risers and the build-up will help us to get a smooth transition from the first segment of the track to the second segment of the track. And in the following steps, I will explain you how I create my build-ups. So the first element that we're going to create in our build-up context will be the riser element. You could probably take this from any sample pack. There's so many riser and downfilter sample packs out there. But as I'm pretty much into sound design and I create them in my own tracks, I will also create my own riser here. And I found a really simple method to do this. So we're going to need two mixer channels, which both contain Edison and that are basically serial. So you have one channel going into the other channel and the second channel goes into the master. So the first MI chain will be called record. The second will be called simply overall. And this overall goes into the master. So load an instance of Edison on both of them. And now you have the capability to record with this Edison, which is on your overall channel, to record everything that comes from the Edison on your record channel. This is important later. So if you're following along this tutorial in your DAW, just hit the pause button, set this up, and then once you have this, click play again. Now grab your first Edison in the chain, so the one on the record channel, and load up any sample that is longer than like 1 second or something. Really doesn't matter which sample it is, as long as it is nothing that contains just voice or just a sine wave or something. I'm just go with this tiger moan as it says here. Kind of sounds funny. So once you've loaded this up, make sure that it is just in mono. This is just in mono, but sometimes you have the case that it contains stereo information. In this case, do a right click, go to tools, and then convert left channel to mono or convert right channel to mono. Depends a little bit on your sample. Sometimes your sample has a lot more right information than left information, or the other way around. I also like to normalize my samples. I don't know, this is just a thing I do that I can more easily turn down the volume later instead of turning it up in the case that it is too quiet. So once you have this, make sure that the infinity option is enabled. So in the upper left corner, it's called loop. So that your sample is looped all over again. Now take an excerpt from the sample. Like has no long in and out fades. So go with something like this. And in case you have clicking at the beginning and at the end, I don't know if you heard it, but there's a slight clicking. Go to the very beginning of your sample, select a really small amount of time and hit the fade in button, and do the same at the end of the sample with your fade out button. Thus you make sure that the beginning and the end of your sample are both at amplitude 0, and this should prevent too much clicking. Yeah, the clicking is gone. So in the next step, open the second Edison in your chain, which is on our overall channel. Here in this recording settings, hit now and start to record. So now it starts to record everything that comes from our record channel. And now go into the Edison that is on your record channel and hit this scrub tool. Drag your mouse really fast to the right and then just let go of it. So you get something that sounds like this. As you've heard, it increases the pitch of the sample really fast and then goes really fast down again. And now on the Edison in your overall channel, delete everything that is silent. So maybe something like this. Now if you listen to this in a looped way, it sounds like this. Now again, select a small excerpt from the sample. Something like this maybe. Doesn't sound so bad. Maybe this. And I think by now you already see where this is going. Use the scrub tool again, and now we can already approximately hear what our riser is going to sound like. Hold this down and start to drag your mouse to the right really slow so that you increase the pitch step by step. And thus you're going to hear what your riser is approximately going to sound like. Repeat this with different settings of your selection here until you found something that you like. I think I like this really much. And now again, I cut this, delete everything else and paste it again. And as I did before, to prevent clicking, I make small fades at the beginning and at the end of the sample. Now select everything again, and either you hit Ctrl and L or Command and L for Apple, or right click, I think it's in Edit or in Tools. Yeah, it's in Tools and Tune Loop. Now Edison will add these nice loop markers here, which are going to help us now. So in the next step, drag and drop this into your playlist, but not like here where the spaces where you arrange your stuff, but on the left side where your track numbers are. And now it asks you this, which kind of track you want to create. And here it's really important that you select instrument tracks. Now it will automatically create a pattern, a sampler instrument, which I call it when there's just a MIDI instance of the sampler, and a linked channel in the mixer. So, and these three are all linked together. So in the next step, open the piano roll of this sampler instrument, search for C5, which is by default your default sample. So it's not pitched up or down, it's not slowed down or sped up, and create a really long MIDI note here. My risers are typically 8 bars long, so I will just create a MIDI note that is 8 bars long. There we go. And now position the sample in the track so that it just ends before your segment switch. So here we have the switch between the first segment where just the kick and the bass is playing, and the second segment where all the other elements come in. And as you can see, my riser just stops here right before this. Next, select the length of your clip or of your MIDI note in the playlist. Open the sampler instrument containing the audio information for your riser. And now drag up the pitch range all the way to 48, which means 48 semitones in each direction, divided by 4 means 4 octaves up and down. You probably could do this with less pitch range in some occasions, but we're just going to find out what sounds best in the context of the track, and thus I like to have the most possibilities. Create an automation clip out of it, So what you're going to do now is basically the heart or the sense behind a riser. We're going to create tension by increasing volume and pitch of this small audio snippet that we've looped over and over again. So make a curve that is something like this and start to listen to it. You already could hear how the pitch rises, how the pitch increases, and how tension is basically built up. I think the pitch at the beginning is a little bit too low, and I think we can go a little bit higher at the end. And at the beginning, make sure you have like minimal to zero volume. Sounds good, I guess. And now I'm going to listen to it in the context of kick and bass. So I think I will just keep it as this. So now I've activated all the other elements, and now I'm going to find out how the riser sounds in the context of the transition and if it fits, if it makes it any smoother. And yeah, let's see. So now we've basically finished creating a riser. I mean, we could rename it real quick so that we find it later. So I really think this sounds okay. But as you probably heard, the change is still too harsh. It's too hard. And this is why we are going to the next chapter of our video, which will cover the fills. Fills are basically really small amounts of time before the change of a track segment, which do not contain the main groove, but fast-paced drums or effects and a lot of noise and kind of elements that you haven't heard in the segment really much. And this helps us to create a good transition and to inform the listener that something new is about to come and that a huge change is about to be done. So my fills are typically 1 bar long, and to make room for our fill, we delete everything that is right in the bar before our synth and our snare and heads start to play. So I shorten the riser, I delete all the bass notes here, and the kick. So now when we're listening to the last 4 bars before our transition, it sounds like this. Our fills will sit there where there is a small silence before the transition hits. So I could make a whole video about fills, about how to create them, about how I create them, but this would just be too long for this video. So I'm just searching for fills that I have in my sample library and try out different stuff until I found something that really sounds good. So now I created something that I think sounds really fitting. These are just samples from my library that I put together. So a filled sample and some additional elements. And now let's listen to the last 4 bars of segment 1 and the first 4 bars of segment 2 and how the fills together with the riser, create a transition that basically announces that something new is about to happen. I think it's still a little bit too loud. This should be good. Yeah, I like that. I like that. So this will be it for fills, at least in this tutorial. If you wish for a separate fills tutorial, just let me know in the comments. And we're going to the next step to create a smooth transition. The next thing a lot of producers do to enhance their transitions, at least when it comes to high energy transitions, when you go from a low to a high energy level in the track, is to use build-up snares, which is basically that you have a repeated snare sound that gets faster over time. So first you have like quarter notes or beats, then you have half beats, and then quarter beats or 16th notes. And these increase in volume over time and maybe increase in pitch over time. And I'm just going to show you what I mean. Some of you may have seen my snare tutorial. Please don't use these snares. PsyTrance snares are very soft compared to other electronic snares like in dubstep or drum and bass, or even in metal they have really, really hard snares. And we're going to use such a snare for this. So don't use your regular snare, but use any other snare sample that has a lot more punch. I have this dubstep sample kit. I don't know where I downloaded it, but it's definitely free. So just go search for dubstep Empire drum kit. And they have a whole lot of snares. And I take almost all of my build-up snares from here. Doesn't sound too bad. Let me just rename this real quick so I will find it later. Now just drag and drop your snare into the playlist. If you want to use automation clips later, which I strongly recommend, don't drop it in the playlist where your elements are, but on the track again. And now don't create an instrument track, but an audio track so that you have your samples here. And now again, begin 8 bars or 4 bars before your segment change and start with quarter notes or 8 notes. I have heard a lot of producers who use 16th notes all the time and then increase the volume, but I'm personally not that much a fan of it. So for this entire 4 bars, I will use quarter notes or beats. Turned on the volume so it doesn't clash too much. Now just listen to it, how it sounds. If I turn the volume down, it really sounds good. So in the next step, I will copy just the last snare and decrease its length by the half. This is a quarter note and this is an 8 note. I just bam these so that I have as much as here. So here I have 16 quarter notes and here I have exactly 16 eighth notes. Not just the note length increases, but also the kind of pattern. So the time gets just divided by 2. Now we're doing the same again for this section here. 1/16 note length and then 16 of these snares again. Now we just created a simple snare buildup. Really doesn't sound that bad. I tend to use small fade outs here so that these snares don't clash with each other and don't produce nasty peaks that are nasty to remove later when mastering. So make sure that your sample ends precisely at 0 before the next one starts. And yeah, in the next step, I'm going to increase the volume of these snares over time. So I select my length in the playlist and automate volume. You can either automate the channel volume in case you have other elements like a clap playing at the same time on the same channel, then it would make sense to automate this. Or you automate the volume of the sample itself. And in the last step, at least regarding our build-up snare, I'm going to create a pitch envelope, and I don't go above 1 octave here. So 1 octave or 12 semitones is more than enough. Now, when you just create a pitch envelope and go over time, you will see that your snare sample will get shorter. To prevent this, simply select the stretch sample in the sampler. And now it will increase the pitch, but not cut it in volume accordingly. Some of you may think that everything after here, before our segment change, is a bit too much, like the riser and the snare clashes with the main groove that we have there, so with the kick and the bass. And that the riser and the kick and the bass and everything can't be heard correctly. And yeah, I think the same way. That's why we're going to resolve this in the next chapter, where I will be showing you something that many producers do. Of course, I'm talking about filtering your kick and your bass just before the segment change. I tend to use a 4-beat pattern here. So for the last 4 beats, everything that there is regarding kick, bass, or sometimes even hi-hats and snares, if they are there, will be filtered. I have my filters here, a low pass filter and a high pass filter. And I'm just going to activate them. And now I play around in the track until I found something that I like. I tend to cut a little bit of highs and a little bit of lows, which out here with your beginning, sometimes when you cut too less, you get like a bass boom, a low bass area, which could be annoying. So make sure that you cut enough here. So now I got something that I like regarding the envelope section and how it sounds. And to get the most green result of your track, I would suggest that you copy them or cut them and paste them somewhere else on the track. Put them in the same channel, which is luckily possible in FL Studio. And then consolidate these as one track, so which is basically rendering them out into the playlist itself, into the project itself. Make sure you have your filters enabled. Now delete the samples and deactivate your filters again so that you have your maximum quality and that your kick and bass is not filtered. I think this is just a thing that comes from my experience. I'm going to add a single kick here at the beginning of a fill section. And I think I've done this in a lot of tracks of me. I don't know if I like it more with or without the kick. Don't think it makes that much of a difference. So I'm just gonna keep it. So let's listen to it all together, and you will notice that you can hear the build-up snare and the riser much better. Okay, Okay, maybe not the snare because it's really, really quiet. So I think I'm going to increase the volume a little bit. So now that we have created some room by filtering the kick and the bass, we could think about adding additional elements to make it sound really full again, but not too full, of course. And in this last chapter of the video, I'm going to show you 2 things that I do to make my transition even fuller and even smoother, especially when it comes to lead synthesizers or lead elements in the highest energy point of your track. In this video, I've been talking a lot about changes, transitions, smooth transitions, and getting ready for these changes. And this is basically what we're doing now. A technique that I really like to use is introducing my lead elements, in this case, this example synth. So this is the most prominent element and that element that stands out the most in section 2 of the track. And what I like to do is to introduce it to the listener right before it plays at its full energy. I'm going to copy this pattern and add it in the 8 bars before our transition, before a change. And then I will apply a filter so that it A, decreases in volume, and B, that the higher frequencies aren't heard that much, so that it doesn't play at its full cleanness and at its full energy, but that the listener still can kind of get an idea what's coming now. So I have my synth here in the mixer, and at the last position, I will add a fast LP. You can do this with any filter that you want. If it has high and low pass function, I tend to use the low pass in most of the time, but sometimes a high pass can also sound really good. Select the 8 bars before the transition or the 4 bars. Sometimes I do it with 4 bars depending on the context. Add a little bit of resonance and then automate the cutoff. Make sure that the cutoff is at its maximum position at the point the segment starts and the synth starts blasting fully. At the beginning, make it like maybe 10-20% so that you can barely hear your synth. To make this fitting, I will mute all the other elements except for kick and bass. Now together with all the other elements. Sounds good, but I think it's clashing with the fills. And especially here in this area, it's getting too loud. So I will just turn on the cutoff here. You could leave it like this. It's not clashing with anything in this area anymore, but you can still hear the synth. But I think I'm going to cut it in the last bar so that we just have the fills here, which was our initial purpose for the fills, that we have like a small segment of the track where nothing sounds like segment 1 or segment 2. Let's listen to the 8 bar pattern. So the 8 bars before the drop or the change. I think the riser could be a lot louder in the last 4 bars, so maybe I'm going to adjust it like this. So this already sounds really, really good, and you could basically leave it like that. It has high energy, it has a lot of elements. The tension is risen before introducing your main elements. And one last thing that I like to do, often you can't actively hear this, but it still supports the sound and it still makes it fuller, is white noise. So I'm not speaking of just white noise, but filtered white noise. And this is this channel. I have this channel in every track, and this is really, really basic. So I just have white noise, a volume envelope, and a bandpass filter. I'm just going to create 7 bars of pure white noise. So leaving the last bar empty for fillers. Now I'm just increasing the band here, which is basically doing this. So you have this frequency range, and by increasing this, you're shifting your range from the bottom to the top. And also I will increase the volume so that you don't hear it at the beginning. At the end, it's very strong. Again, this is something very subjectively, and this is something that has to fit in the context of the track, so there's no overall rule how to set your envelopes here. I wasn't able to hear the noise actively, and to show you the small subconscious impact it makes, I will play to you this small part of the example. One time without noise and the second time with noise. So it really makes it kind of fuller and better. I was lucky because the initial automation envelope that I chose here sounded good right away. Sometimes you have a lot of high information or low information that really doesn't fit in the context, but in this case it does. So this is basically it. I think we should listen to it all together one last time. I thank you all for your attention until now. If you like this video, please consider liking and sharing it to other producers. And if you don't want to miss out further tutorials in the future, make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also make sure that you follow my Instagram, which is down in the description, in order to be up to date about further tutorials, further gigs, and further releases that I have. And with that being said, I wish you all a good time, and I say until next time, bye.